Do you want to know why people cannot get ahead financially? It's because they listen to ridiculous things that people say, and some of them are very well respected financial pundits, financial gurus, call them whatever you want, that are trying to do the right thing, helping people. And I think sometimes they forget who their audience is, and they give them really, to be just blunt with you, piss poor advice. So for those of you that are looking to improve your game of money and finance and looking to build up the ability to get to what I like to call financial freedom, then you need to watch this. There's a video. I subscribe to his newsletter, so I get the information from him every month. And his name is Ramit Sethi. And Ramit gives out, to be honest with you, a lot of really good information for people to help them build up their net worth and their wealth and their financial freedom. And I hate to always go and pick on some of these people, but he did a video, and you have to watch this first 30 seconds of it, because to me, this is the reason and the problem why people lose at this game. So I'm going to play this real quick for you.
The housing market is quietly bankrupting millions of Americans, and nobody is warning you. Not your family, not your friends, and certainly not your real estate.
Okay, so he talks about the real estate agent too. Now, if you guys watch this regularly or you know me, I have been in the real estate business for almost 30 years. Our team has been selling real estate from the late 1990s. And I just hate when they go and talk about how the housing market is bankrupting many Americans, and not to listen to your friends or family, or especially your real estate agent. Well, again, there's a lot of bad real estate agents out there, I will admit that, but having a real estate agent is a very important feature that you need to have in your wealth building journey. We'll talk about that in another video another day, and I don't want to sound biased because I'm a realtor, but listen to the rest of this first 30 seconds.
Today, I'm going to show you why buying a house, the so-called American dream, has quietly become a financial trap for millions of Americans, even though most people still think it's the smart thing to do. Now, I've paid well over $1 million in rent, and it was some of the best money I ever spent.
So he's talking about how he has spent over $1 million, and this is some of the best money he ever spent. And this video is just over 39 minutes long, and he's going to go through the entire process as to why renting is better than owning, and how in many cities, which in today's exact right now current market, yes, there are plenty of places in this country, my city where I live included, where maybe the rent and the house payment would be very similar, or the actual rent payment would be much cheaper. And really, he goes into this for, almost 39 minutes. But what is hilarious to me is with about 30 to 45 seconds to go in the video, he gives you the catch. And here is the catch of this video. So I want to show you this. We're going to go to the last 30 seconds of the video. And here is the catch, right? So he talks for 38 minutes before he tells you this. And then he goes and he tells you this here at the end, okay?
Now, please note this major caveat. This usually only works if you're investing while renting. If you're not investing, then buying a house is usually a better financial decision because you're simply not putting money away anywhere else. This is actually how most Americans deal with their money. I think that's really risky to have the bulk of your net worth in one geographically undiversified, illiquid asset with high holding costs, which you're not really sure how to get the money out of it.
So here is the catch. The catch is this, and it's actually a huge thing. And what they're saying is that whatever your rent would be, let's say it's $2,500. The example that he gave us in this video was $2,500, and that by the time you buy a house, and his favorite word is phantom costs, which a lot of the costs, which we'll talk about, are not phantom costs, that the difference between owning and all these phantom costs versus renting is $1,908 a month. And then if you took that $1,908 and invested it, then you'd be worth millions and millions of dollars. And here's the part that I have the hardest time with. First of all, there's a reason why the average net worth of a property owner, a homeowner, is literally 40 times that of a renter. And it's because of this. They go through it over and over. They talk about how your mortgage, your total overall cost of owning your home, so not just your mortgage, to be your principal, your interest, your taxes, your insurance, your maintenance, any other things that have to do with the house going forward, and figuring out that should be 28% of your income. And if it is 28% of your income, then you're set. You can actually afford to buy this house. But the reason why most people aren't buying a house isn't because renting's cheaper than owning and they're going to invest the difference, is because they can't afford the house payment in the first place. So most people who are renting, let's say you could afford to rent this house at $2,500 a month, and the house payment was $2,500 a month, take away all the other phantom costs that he's talking about. The reason why most people will buy is because they know at that point they're going to be able to build us some equity. And he, in this video, crushes equity. It talks about all the different ways that equity is like not a real thing. And if you figure out the true cost of owning property, that, this mythical equity thing that, to be honest with you, he just shits all over, it is just really not going to happen because it's just so expensive to own a property. So I want to walk you, I took some notes on this, and I want to walk you through some of the examples and things that he gives you in this video. And part of it is he's saying, don't buy a house to impress other people or look wealthy or impress your family and friends. But he never talks about it that when people rent, they're doing the same thing. And whether it's clothes or cars or watches or eating dinner out or whatever it is, lots of people spend money very poorly on trying to keep up with the Joneses or impressing their friends. And most people that I have worked with over the years are not buying a house to impress someone else. They're buying a house because they know this is one of the ways. For most people that aren't ultra wealthy, if you have lots of money and you could afford to rent, he talks in the video how he rents not one home, but he rents 2 homes in LA and New York. And if he wanted to, he could just write a check for a house tomorrow. Well, that's great. But the majority of people that we're talking to right now, that's not the situation they're in. The situation is they're renting because renting might be less expensive than owning. And they can't own, not because they don't want to, but because they can't afford to own. And even rent might be more than 28% of your overall income. So if rent is and owning's more, then you're getting people in a position where they would never, ever be able to own a house ever. And it just drives me crazy when they talk about these phantom costs. So some of the phantom costs they talk about are when they figure out your house payment is they only talk about principal and interest. Well, in all my years of helping people buy and sell homes, even if they're paying cash, we're also talking about property taxes, homeowners insurance, and then based upon the age of the property, we're talking about maintenance and things along those lines. So maintenance for a 5-year-old house is going to be completely different than maintenance for a 50 or 70-year-old house. So those are things people have to think about, and we have those discussions as good real estate agents that have helped lots of people over the years. And the other thing that he talks about that's a hidden phantom cost are utilities. Well, you're going to have utilities on a house. You're also going to have utilities if you're renting a house. So whether you own or rent, you're going to be paying for utilities. And of course, one of these big, fabulous features of renting is just going ahead and saying, oh, I don't have to do any work. The rent is the most money I'm going to spend. I'm never going to have any additional costs. And I just call the landlord and they fix everything. Okay. I've done property management now for a really long time as well. We manage about 90 rental homes. We are people you want to rent from because we take care of things as far as if you're a renter and there's problems at the house. But do you know how many people I know that rent from shitty apartment complexes or the owners directly or from some property management company that does a horrible job? My girlfriend's daughter rents a place in California and they had a leak in their building and it took months to get that kitchen redone because it was a major thing and not a minor thing. So it's not this automatic, hey, there's no more expenses. The other thing you have to be aware of as a renter is if you damage something, that's your fault. You broke a window, you did something, whatever it is, and you did it yourself. The landlord doesn't need to pay to fix that. There are certain things that as a renter, if you damage it yourself, we might have someone that will come fix it for you, but many times you're going to have to pay for those repairs. So there's not this, here's the rent, that's my minimum cost. There's no other things involved in all that. There are utilities, there are potentially some other costs. So just know, it's not as simple as you think. The other thing is when you're a renter, because they talk about the nice part about renting, and there are some good perks and benefits of renting where if you're in a lease, then you're limiting your commitment to this property. It makes it easier to be more flexible, to be able to move more. And obviously, if you had money saved up as a down payment, you have that money sitting there being invested rather than tied up in a house that is, your primary residence is a little bit different of an investment versus if you're buying rental property. But we're talking specifically today about the house you live in. And yes, the house you live in is going to be treated a little bit differently than an actual rental property. But there are lots of things in here that it just makes me laugh when they talk about the phantom costs. A lot of costs that are involved in real estate would be when you buy or sell a property. But when you're a renter, guess what? When you're getting to the end of your lease, the owner might sell the property and you get forced to move. So then there are going to be costs for you of moving. We just had this happen. We had some renters in one of the properties that we were managing that literally rented from us for 15 years. The owner passed away, the family inherited it, and now there's a couple of the properties that he owns that the will says we have to sell them for him. And so that renter didn't want to move, and guess what? They just had the cost of moving, which was an unexpected, phantom cost for them. And I'm not sure exactly where they went or what they did or what the costs were, but those are things as a renter. It's not always this situation where you just get to rent forever and go on, in those kind of situations. So I always love how they talk about things in the short term. And in the short term, yes, right now, summer of 2025 or even the last few years, it is expensive to own a home right now. And in many markets, renting might make more sense in the short term and depending on what your situation is. But here's the thing. If you extrapolate this thing over time, because one of the other things we talk about in this video is that at the very beginning of a 30-year mortgage, your house payment is being paid majority to interest, property taxes, and insurance, and not a lot towards principal. But over a 30-year time frame, if you want to take the investments in the stock market and you want to take the investments of a house, you should do both. It isn't do one or the other, it's do both. And that's part of why most people's net worth is tied up in their real estate, because most people are not good at saving and investing, and a house forces them to save and invest. Now, you definitely should run numbers. You definitely should end up in a property you can afford and not buy too big, too nice, too fancy. Don't refinance your mortgage all the time. Don't be looking to get something that is just way beyond your scope of what you can afford to do. And if you do those things over the long haul and you do saving and investing as well, you're going to win at this game. And here's the thing they don't talk about if you want to do this over 30 years. If you want to have a 30-year fixed rate, fixed monthly payment every month, buy something. Now, I realize, in this video we talk about you got to stay in the house for at least 10 years. Well, yeah, if you're buying a house, this is not something you want to try to turn and flip in a year or two. There were times that this actually worked because house prices went up exponentially. But the example they use many times are these homes in the current market and the current environment and as of this year and today, that if you rent a house for $2,500 and you buy a house, it's going to be much more expensive to do that. Here's another example. I use this one all the time. My two kids, okay? I have a 28-year-old and a 24-year-old. My 28-year-old, it was either 5 or 6 years ago, we helped him buy a house over in a city called Sparks, Nevada. And at that time, the house was roughly $300,000. We put some money in it because it was roughly a 30-year-old house at the time and it needed a bunch of renovations and remodeling, and we did all that. But at the time, he was able to get a really low interest rate, and his house payment right now is $1,400. And it is locked in for another 25 years. Yes, property taxes could go up a little bit. Yes, insurance could go up a little bit. But here's the thing. If we rented his house out right now, we could probably rent it out for $2,200. So he's saving $800 a month while he's building up equity and money in the value of this property. And in a short amount of time, that house that was basically, we paid $270, we put about 30 grand into it. That house, in my mind, is a $300,000 house, is now worth $450,000. He, because he had two renters in there with him that were paying most of his mortgage, has been paying extra on his house every month. And so he has used his house as a glorified ATM machine. And now he has probably $200,000 worth of equity in a house that he's only owned for 5 years. Now, if today my daughter went to try to buy his house, one, that house went from $300,000 to $450,000. And today's interest rates are around 7% versus the 3.25% that my son has. And yes, for her right now, it would be a terrible decision. It would be totally unaffordable. And she would literally have to make about triple what she makes now, or have 3 roommates that all pay about what he pays, because her house payment would be pushing towards the high $3,000, almost $4,000 a month payment. So yes, if you want to look at things in a bubble, you want to look at things in a vacuum, you want to look at things at a very specific time frame, today, right now, this minute, for many people, renting makes more sense. And I would never say that renting is a waste of money or that renting is something you should never do. Because for many people, they'll relocate to where I live and then they want to rent here for a year because maybe they don't know the area. Maybe they're taking a job that they're not sure they're going to love. And so there are times in your life where renting makes sense. But there is a huge, huge reason as to why homeowners are much wealthier because most people, here's the caveat, right? We're going to go to the end of this video and we're talking about, it says renting is not a failure, it's a strategy. And yes, it is a strategy, but here's the thing. The catch is this. Most people are not going to be able to rent and make up the difference. So like, for example, if someone was renting my son's house right now for $2,200, and in order to buy it, let's say it was going to cost them $3,700 a month, and there was that $1,500 difference that I just talked about. Most people don't have the extra $1,500 a month to rent. So the numbers and the facts and the things that he talks about are not how people are going to get themselves wealthy, what they would be better off doing. And this is the part where it's so annoying that people want to tell you the American dream is ridiculous, don't buy a house, it's unaffordable, all these things is that if you can buy a house, and maybe, yes, on a monthly basis, that house is a little more expensive than renting. But over that long period of time, you're going to win financially because you're going to own this property. And then like he said in the video, at the end, he talks about how, maybe you can't do that whole $1,500 a month difference, but maybe you can do $300 or $500. Well, then just do it in reverse and own the real estate. Because here's the thing. You can leverage in real estate by buying a $400,000, a $500,000, a $600,000 house. And when it goes up 10%, it goes 10% up on the value of the property, not 10% of what you own in it. So here's some other examples that have worked for me and my family over the years. My stepmother bought a property in Manhattan Beach, California. I can't remember the exact year, but it was the early 1970s. And at that time, she paid $100,000 for this property, which in the early 1970s was a ridiculous amount of money, right? It was super, super expensive for the time. We've had conversations about this with her. And when she went to sell that property just a handful of years ago, it's got to be maybe 6 or 7 years ago now, she sold that property for $4 million. $4 million. $100,000 to $4 million. Now, this is in those expensive areas that he's talking about. This was Manhattan Beach, California. And in properties like LA, Manhattan Beach, San Francisco, New York, places that are very expensive, you have the ability to see prices exponentially rise. I help people buy and sell real estate in Reno, Nevada. We get lots of people that move here from the Bay Area. So whether it's San Francisco or San Jose or Oakland or some of these Bay Area super expensive places that people bought homes 30, 40, 50 years ago, he says it's really hard to get the equity out of your house if you own it free and clear. You want to know what all these people are doing? They decided California isn't the place for them. So they bought some home 30, 40 years ago that they paid $100,000, $150,000, $200,000 for, that now might be worth $2, $3, $4, $5 million. They sell it. They basically move here, buy a house for $1 million, $800,000, $600,000, 1.2, whatever it is. And then the rest of that money that they had, they put right into the bank and into their investments. And now that money is super liquid that they have. So they spent their whole 20, 30, 40-year time window of their career and their working by doing what? Investing in the stock market, owning real estate, doing both. And now they've decided where they live is too expensive and they're going to move to a much more affordable area and now only spend a little bit of the money. And now they're winning on multiple levels because not only did they kill it in the real estate market, but they also killed it in the investment market. And you should be doing both. Now, someone like Ramit, who's in a situation where he is wealthy, he's done a great job building up wealth. He's done a great job helping a lot of you build up wealth. And I don't want to shit on what he's saying, but this particular video in a vacuum in today's world in the short term might make sense. But what I don't want people doing is watching that and then thinking, I'm never going to own real estate for the rest of my life, because that is not what you want to do. You don't want to rent your entire life. There are seasons of renting, but to me, he says the other way, but I totally disagree with him on this, is rent is not a wealth building strategy. I don't care what he says. It is not a wealth building strategy. Owning property is. And here's another example. I can even tell you for myself in the short term, okay? I bought a home in 2015. It was the first time I went and bought an expensive home. We bought a home in the Reno, Nevada area for just under $840,000. And due to some luck, just like a lot of people in the stock market due to some luck, because obviously we know the stock market doesn't go up every year, but due to some luck, we timed it perfectly and bought a house for $840,000, sold it. It was 7 or 8 years later for $1.7 million. Our money doubled in 7 years. I think we did pretty good on that particular house. But again, it's because I do run my numbers and I do understand what I'm getting into. But in my life, when I started off, my first house was $106,000. My second house was $160,000. My third house was $270,000. And then on my fourth house, when I was in my mid 40s, then I bought what to me was an expensive house in the mid $800,000 range. And currently now, for the last 5 years, I live in a house that I bought 5 years ago for $440,000 that now I could sell for $675,000. So we have made money, me, my family, we have made money plenty of times in the real estate market. So you can do this in lots of different fashions. Now, if in the short term, it doesn't make sense to own real estate, I get it, rent. But if you are going to rent, then you need to do what he's talking about. You need to be investing. You need to be putting money in the stock market, and you need to be put money aside so that you can own real estate. Because if you do both, long term, it's great. And the thing that's nice about, owning property is nobody can force you to move. Yes, property taxes go up a little bit annually every year, but so does your rent, so does everything else. And how nice is it going to be if you bought a home in your 20s and 30s, and by the time you get into your 50s or early 60s, you own your home free and clear, and then your only expense is going to be property taxes and some insurance. And yeah, maybe you'll have some maintenance on a house, but imagine what rent's going to be 30 years from now versus those things. So, if you want to watch this video, you can. I just think there's a lot of missing information, and it's really kind of clickbait where he talks about the very, very beginning, how millions and millions of Americans are screwed and they're going to be broke because of, house poor because the homes they own. And honestly, for many people, being house poor is not a bad thing because it forces you to save and spend on your house rather than to spend on stuff that is not going to go up in value over time. And yes, housing goes up and down, just like the stock market goes up and down. They make it sound like in the short term, I can go invest $10,000 in the stock market and the price of it could go down, just like the housing prices could go down. So you don't need to get focused in the short vacuum. You need to look long-term, wide horizon, and those kind of things. And if you want to learn how all this stuff works, especially the real estate part, reach out to me. I am a longtime real estate agent in Reno, Nevada. I help people buy and sell all over Northern Nevada. But I also have a degree in money and finance or finance and economics. And I like to have these conversations with my clients more than most realtors. So if you don't have a good realtor that can not only have a conversation with you about helping you buy and sell houses, but can also have a conversation with you about your finances and your wealth, especially you younger people. Again, I talk to a lot of people in their 20s because I want to help you get wealthy. It's the whole point of doing this channel. I have a whole separate real estate channel that I call At Living in Reno Tile that I work on. But this particular channel is hopefully going to get some traction so we can help you guys understand small, simple, easy ways to build up wealth. So hopefully this is helpful to you. I got a lot of other details here that I would love to talk about, but I think I've gone long enough for today. So I appreciate you checking this one out. Check out other videos on the channel that we're watching. And just know, don't listen to anyone in a small little window, in a small little vacuum. Ramit does a lot of really good things. I think he's totally missing the mark on this one. And again, I know this as a longtime real estate agent. Renting is just not a long-term wealth building strategy.